Hello gang, Mario from the Woodfather here on Timbecon's channel today. Now, I am no stranger to box joints. I've made a couple of them in my time, and I love them now as much as I did back when I made the first one. Today though, we're doing something special. Today, I'm going to show you how you can make this super sexy double box joint box over on the router table using the Incra LS Positioner. Now with my previous Incra video where I made dovetail boxes, I actually put the plans to the side and I showed you my custom steps for how I go through the process. I'm going to do that again today. Not because there's anything wrong with the plans, they've never steered me wrong, but they are very verbose and I find that I spend too much time reading and not enough time making sawdust. But if you follow along with me, you'll get the same results that I do. Now there's a little more to this as compared to a normal box. For starters, we're going to need 7 pieces of wood to kick off with. Ideally, you'll also have contrasting timber so that you can really show off all that extra work that you're going to be doing here. In fact, there's no real point doing this if you don't have contrasting timber. For my box, I'm going to use pine, jarrah and spotted gum. The only reason I've got spotted gum is because I need 2 different thicknesses and I don't have thick enough jarrah. So firstly, you're going to need 2 boards, which are 3/4 of an inch thick, one of each species. Then you're going to need 4 boards that are 3/8 of an inch thick, 2 of each species. And finally, you're going to want 1 more 3/8 inch thick piece for your test cuts. So the 4 skinnier pieces, that's going to be the 4 walls of your box. And the 2 thicker pieces, this is what we're going to use to make that contrasting edge. So for the sides of my box, all my boards are 184mm long, and that's just because I want to have a square box. You can do whatever you want. Your accent pieces, the thicker ones, they can be around about, I'm going to say that's about 15, 16 centimeters. Once we start cutting it up, you'll understand why you don't need them to be quite so long. Yes, this is one of the few projects where it makes a little bit more sense to work in both metric and imperial. It's only for the thickness of the boards, and it's just because that's how the Incra works. To help with accuracy, you want to mark one side of all your boards as being the fence side. And that's so every time we make a cut on the Incra, we're going to put the same edge against the fence, and that's going to make sure everything lines up nicely. To make the box, you're going to want to use a 10mm straight cut bit. Now you can get away with a 9.8mm or a 9.7mm bit if that's all you've got. I've done that, it does work, but honestly, just go on by the 10mm straight cut bit. Once you've got your 10mm bit, install it in the router table and set the height to be roughly half the height of your thinner boards. Now we can also set our templates in the Incra. We should have 2 double box joint templates to insert. They're called numbers 1 and 2. Drop them both in. Now, just like any template that you cut on the Incra, you need to know what your suggested center point is, so you know where to set up the template at the start. We do need to go back to the guide for that. My workpieces are all 84mm across, so I just need to look in this table down here, which is called the Incra double box joint template, find where 84mm is, and then I'll know what my suggested center point is. Long story short, for an 84mm wide piece, my suggested center will be 7E. Just like any Incra joint, you're going to need to center your board to the jig. I've got some really good tips for doing that easily in another video on Timbecon's channel. Look up there or maybe there. Now that I've centered my board, I've locked the fence down so it won't move. And it's a little bit difficult to see, but there's an alignment line here, which I'm going to put 7E directly underneath. And that's right about there. So now I've got this outside template set up exactly where I want it, so I can unlock the fence and it's not going to affect anything. Slide it over a little bit because on these templates there's 2 little align marks. So you can see that tiny little align mark there, and there's another one on this template. So now I want to move this template so that those 2 align marks line up correctly. So cutting double box joints on the Incra is the same as cutting any other joints on the Incra. You just have to follow the template. In this case, it's a little bit more involved because there's 2 templates that you have to follow. So all up, there are 6 separate cuts you need to make. On one template, it's ABC. On the other template, it's DEF. The first cuts that we're going to make are on the thicker pieces of wood, B and E, and we're going to cut grooves into them like this. Then we'll take the thinner material and we'll cut box joints into it. That will be cuts A and F on the 2 different types of wood that we're going to use. Then we'll go back to those groove pieces from the start and we'll cross cut them so that we get these little biscuits. These biscuits get glued into the top of those joints. And once the glue is dried, we'll take these back to the router table for our final cuts, which are going to be C and D, and we'll end up with a little pattern like this. Simple as that. Yes, it can be a little bit confusing, especially the first time you do it, but don't let that put you off because it's so much fun to make and the joints look spectacular. So now we're finally ready to make our first cuts. This is going to be cuts B and then cuts E on the thicker boards only. Make those grooved cuts on both boards, ensuring that you keep the side that you marked fence against the fence. On one of the workpieces, you're probably going to trap the workpiece in between the router bit and the fence. That's a big no-no. Instead of doing that, bump the fence over so you're taking a very light pass and make a climb cut, moving the piece from the left to the right and pushing it into the fence at the same time as pressing down for safety. After making that pass, bump the fence over a little bit and make another pass. Keep going until you reach the mark on the template. It's a little bit slower this way, but it's a lot safer. Once you've made both sets of cuts, raise the bit to be exactly the height of your thinner 3/8 material and cut those grooves again. Don't touch your router height from this point on. If you want to, you can definitely cut these grooves in one pass instead of having to lift the router halfway through. For me personally, it just feels like I'm taking off too much. I don't like working the machine too hard. I don't like risking my fingers that much. So I do it in 2 passes, but you're welcome to do whatever you like. Drop in 2 of your thinner workpieces and start making your A cuts. These are going to slot into your B cut grooves, so make sure you get the opposite timber colour. Then make your F cuts on the remaining thinner workpieces. These ones will likewise slot right into the E cut grooves. I know that does sound a little bit confusing, but it is straightforward in practice when it's all laid out in front of you. Now grab the boards that you've cut grooves in, the B and E ones, and begin slicing them up over on the chop saw or the table saw or whatever you like cutting things up on. You want them to be just a fraction thicker than the thinner boards are. Make sure they're a nice fit and then glue them onto the ends of both boards. So at this point, you need to just pause, put your hands down and stop touching everything. You have to give the glue time to dry and it has to cure properly. The Incra guide says to wait about an hour before you start using it again. The Woodfather guide says don't touch it for 24 hours. Just put it in the workshop, leave it there, go and do something else. Once they've cured, you'll need to sand, plane, or otherwise trim those ends down to the same thickness as the rest of the board. I find that the belt sander is the quickest and easiest way for me. The final step in cleaning up these boards is to trim them to length. Set yourself up with a stop block on the table saw. I'm going to leave about 2, maybe 3 mil of contrasting edge past all those joints. That measurement's not critical, it's what you like. You just need to make it consistent across all of them. Now, somewhat surprisingly, we're almost done. We only need to make the C and then the D cuts left on our boards, and then we'll have box joints that we can put together, and we'll have a double box joint. There's nothing you haven't done here before. Just follow the templates, make your cuts nice and slow, and you'll end up with a beautiful looking joint. So once you've finished those last cuts, these are the beautiful bits of timber that you've left with, each of them fitting into each other perfectly. Once I glue it up and clamp it all together, everything's going to be fine, but I've got a very tight deadline. I don't have time to get this one finished. However, here's one that I've prepared earlier. So this is the exact same double box joint and box. It's made with the same timbers, so we've got jarrah, pine and spotted gum on the edges, and it looks absolutely sublime. Even my children, who have practically zero interest in anything woodworking, all 3 of them have come into my office over the last couple of weeks and have looked at this and said, "Oh, cool." Coming from teenagers who couldn't care less about woodworking, I'm going to take that as very high praise. Now, I won't lie, it can be confusing to put this together, especially the first time you do it. As long as you go slow, step by step, you'll figure it out. It's quite straightforward in the end. If you can do a normal box joint on the Incra, you can do a double box joint. So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed that one. The next time I come on Timbecon's channel, I'm going to be doing the double dovetail joint on the Incra. That's a really special looking one and I'm really keen to try it out. I haven't done that yet at all. Until then, make sure you hit subscribe here. Make sure you hit subscribe on the Woodfather. That's my own channel. There'll be a link somewhere for it down below. And then be sure to check out one of these other videos. Cheers, gang.